The founding of Rome is one of the most enduring and richly layered origin stories in the ancient world, shaped as much by myth and legend as by archaeology and historical tradition. Unlike many ancient cities whose origins are lost in obscurity, Rome's beginnings are preserved through a vibrant tapestry of mythological narratives that were carefully cultivated to give the city a noble and heroic lineage. This lecture will explore the legendary roots of Rome, centered on figures like Romulus, Remus, and Aeneas, as well as the archaeological evidence that suggests how early Italic tribes laid the groundwork for the city's historical development in the 8th century BCE. We will begin with the dual founding myths, the tale of Aeneas, the Trojan prince whose journey westward was immortalized in Virgil's Aeneid, and the saga of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers raised by a she-wolf and fated to establish a new city. These myths were more than just folklore. They served political and cultural functions, reinforcing Roman values of loyalty, strength, and divine favor, while also legitimizing the Julio-Claudian lineage under Augustus. From these legends, we move into the early monarchy, exploring the reigns of Rome's 7 kings, each of whom contributed foundational institutions, traditions, and infrastructure to the early city-state. Finally, we will examine the structure of early Roman society, a deeply hierarchical and patriarchal system that divided the population into citizens and non-citizens, patricians and plebeians, and further ranked individuals by wealth and status. In doing so, we will see how Rome's mythical past, political organization, and social structures laid the groundwork for what would become one of the most powerful empires in human history. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain how the mythology surrounding Rome's founding helped shape Roman identity, describe the contributions of the early kings, and understand the complex social and political systems that defined early Roman civilization. Myths surrounding the founding of Rome describe the city's origins through the lens of later figures and events. The founding of Rome can be investigated through archaeology, but traditional stories handed down by the ancient Romans themselves explain the earliest history of their cities in terms of legend and myth. The most familiar of these myths, and perhaps the most famous of all Roman myths, is the story of Romulus and Remus, the twins who were suckled by a she-wolf. This story has to be reconciled with a dual tradition set earlier in time. Romulus and Remus were purported to be the sons of Rhea Silvia and Mars, the god of war, because of a prophecy that they would overthrow their great-uncle Amulius, who had overthrown Silvia's father Numitor. They were, in the manner of many mythological heroes, abandoned at birth. Both sons were left to die on the Tiber River, but were saved by a number of miraculous interventions. After being carried to safety by the river itself, the twins were nurtured by a she-wolf and fed by a woodpecker until a shepherd named Faustulus found them and took them as his sons. When Remus and Romulus became adults and learned the truth about their birth and upbringing, they killed Amulius and restored Numitor to the throne. Rather than wait to inherit Alba Longa, the city of their birth, the twins decided to establish their own city. They quarreled, however, on where to locate the new city, and in the process of their dispute, Romulus killed his brother. Thus, Rome began with a fratricide, a story that was later taken to represent the city's history of internecine political strife and bloodshed. The national epic of mythical Rome, the Aeneid by Virgil, tells the story of how the Trojan prince Aeneas came to Italy. Although the Aeneid was written under the Emperor Augustus between 29 and 19 BCE, it tells the story of the founding of Rome centuries before Augustus's time. The hero, Aeneas, was already well known within Greco-Roman legend and myth, having been a character in the Iliad. But Virgil took the disconnected tales of Aeneas's wanderings and his vague association with the foundation of Rome and fashioned it into a compelling foundation myth or national epic. The story tied Rome to the legends of Troy, explained the Punic Wars, glorified traditional Roman virtues and legitimized the Julio-Claudian dynasty as descendants of the founders, heroes, and gods of Rome and Troy. Virgil makes use of symbolism to draw comparisons between the Emperor Augustus and Aeneas, painting them both as founders of Rome. The Aeneid also contains prophecies about Rome's future, the deeds of Augustus, his ancestors, and other famous Romans. The shield of Aeneas even depicts Augustus's victory at Actium in 31 BCE. Virgil wrote the Aeneid during a time of major political and social change in Rome, with the fall of the Republic and the final war of the Roman Republic tearing through society and causing many to question Rome's inherent greatness. In this context, Augustus instituted a new era of prosperity and peace through the reintroduction of traditional Roman moral values. The Aeneid was seen as reflecting this aim by depicting Aeneas as a man devoted and loyal to his country and its greatness, rather than being concerned with his own personal gains. The Aeneid also gives mythic legitimization to the rule of Julius Caesar, and by extension to his adopted son Augustus, by immortalizing the tradition that renamed Aeneas' son Iulus, making him an ancestor to the family of Julius Caesar. According to the Aeneid, the survivors from the fallen city of Troy banded together under Aeneas, underwent a series of adventures around the Mediterranean Sea, including a stop at newly founded Carthage under the rule of Queen Dido, and eventually reached the Italian coast. The Trojans were thought to have landed in an area between modern Anzio and Fiumicino, southwest of Rome, probably at Laurentum, or in other versions at Lavinium, a place named for Lavinia, the daughter of King Latinus, who Aeneas married. Aeneas's arrival started a series of armed conflicts with Turnus over the marriage of Lavinia. Before the arrival of Aeneas, Turnus was engaged to Lavinia, who then married Aeneas, which began the conflict. Aeneas eventually won the war and killed Turnus, which granted the Trojans the right to stay and to assimilate with the local peoples. The young son of Aeneas, Ascanius, also known as Iulus, went on to found Alba Longa, and the line of Alban kings who filled the chronological gap between the Trojan saga and the traditional founding of Rome in the 8th century BCE. Toward the end of this line, King Procas appears as the father of Numitor and Amulius. At Procas' death, Numitor became king of Alba Longa, but Amulius captured him and sent him to prison. He also forced the daughter of Numitor, Rhea Silvia, to become a virgin priestess among the Vestals. For many years, Amulius was the king. The tortuous nature of the chronology is indicated by Rhea Silvia's ordination among the Vestals, whose order was traditionally said to have been founded by the successor of Romulus, Numa Pompilius. According to the archaeological record of the region, the Italic tribes who originally inhabited the Alban hills moved down into the valleys, which provided better land for agriculture. The area around the Tiber River was particularly advantageous and offered many strategic resources. For instance, the river itself provided a natural border on one side of the settlement, and the hills on the other side provided another defensive position for the townspeople. A settlement in this area would have also allowed for control of the river, including commercial and military traffic, as well as a natural observation point at Isola Tibernia. This was especially important since Rome was at the intersection of the principal roads to the sea from Sabinum and Etruria, and traffic from those roads could not be as easily controlled. The development of Rome itself is presumed to have coalesced around the migrations of these various tribes into the valley, as evidenced by differences in pottery and burial techniques. The discovery of a series of fortification walls on the north slope of Palatine Hill, most likely dating to the middle of the 8th century BCE, provided the strongest evidence for the original site and date of the founding of the city of Rome.